Yes, so welcome to Aspirations Heroes. We've just gone around and heard from everyone. That's really good. And what I want to look at today, as I said, is going to be a short presentation. Then we're going to go into breakout rooms and discuss. But I'm looking at aspirations. And what I mean by aspirations are things that you've aspired to do. And I want to keep it quite general. That can be career, and for a lot of people it will be about work, or it might be about work and jobs, but it could be about lots of different things. So click down. So I just want to say a little bit about these aspirations. That what I'm thinking about is achieving our goals, dreams, purposes. A goal can be very small. Dream can be something that we want to do. Purpose might be even greater, that you feel, well, what am I here on this planet to do? It can be any of those things. And I think with particularly with autism, maybe with other neurodiversities, there can be that desire within us to do something really important, to do something helping the world. And it can sometimes feel a little bit unrealistic. Now, you may have experienced that, you may not have done it. It might not be everyone that's on the autistic spectrum, but I found it came with that feeling of being different, and that feeling of being in some way special. That that big sort of desire. I want to help people find their, I personally wanted to help people find their purpose in life, or something like that, right from teenage years. And express this might be expressed by some in finding work, in finding a vocation, a sense of calling, but it might be in that doesn't necessarily mean paid work and a job. It can be volunteering, it can be just taking initiative and doing things. You can build a life around something. I've found that some people can do that and be paid lots of money for it. Some people can do that and not be paid. And in the end, how much does that matter? I wonder. There are things about work that, if you look with statistics, and I've been researching some of the statistics this week on work and autism, and you find different studies quote different numbers, but I've seen things like 22%, 30%, 22% and 32% of people on the autistic spectrum are working, that are and 80% of people generally, of adults generally, are working. These figures quoted. So you wonder, why is that? And it could be some of that is that people who are working don't want to declare their autism. And we've had that discussion before, haven't we, that it might be higher. But it's still, it can be quite daunting work, particularly full-time work. It can be quite exhausting, and people can burn out. There's lots of energy and maybe masking that's involved when you have to put on a face and seem to be always pretending in order to fit in, and that can be quite exhausting. So maybe there's some of the reasons, but that shouldn't stop you finding your goal. It might not be that sort of paid work that you find that is fulfilling your dream. I think it's important to realize as well, I found that a role isn't necessarily my dream or vocation. It's just some expression of it. Because I've found roles, I had this desire to do something important. I thought maybe, that was involved in teaching in some way, and I got lecturing jobs. I felt that could have been involved in actually in a church at the time. I was thinking that I might work in some way in that, because that would be teaching and helping people. But a lot of these, I've found good aspects of what I've done. I've also found difficult aspects. And so I think that sense of vocation, that sense of dream, is not the same as any particular role or job, but it's just those things can be an expression of that. But these aspirations might be wider, might be different to that. I've put there finding someone. You know, sometimes your aspiration is finding someone that can be a partner, a soulmate, or even finding finding a friend or friends might be an important aspiration for you. But it could be something else. It could be a wide variety of things that you feel, yeah, that's what I want to do with my life. That's what I want to do with my, that's something that I aspire to do. One thing I found is that being autistic, when it comes to the practicality of doing things, I can struggle. I can have these very grand ideas and then feel actually in practice, I'm going to find this really difficult. So when I've got into work and done work, I found I'm hating this. I can't do this. I've got to turn up every day. I've got to get on with life. And so sometimes that theory and practice can be quite a conflict for us. And there's also the expectations of others, expectations of family, expectations of society, things that say, oh, you ought to, you ought to get a job, you ought to get a wife, you ought to make a family, when that's not either feasible or something that someone wants to do. Can be difficult. So there's that. I think part of our aspirations is navigating some of those pressures, the pressures from within us, pressures from outside. Sometimes those pressures from outside have been internalized, that people have told us things, so we think this is something we ought to do. And when we do take an initiative and do something and try to take steps towards our dream, our goal, a job, building a relationship, whatever it is, we can get rejection, we can get disappointment. And I think that's a big thing. I've put it on a whole slide of this, because I think that's an important aspect, that often with autism, we are probably handling rejection and disappointment a little bit more than a lot of people. Part of that is because we are more sensitive. And part of that is also that because we are different, that's more likely to happen, I found. And it's important for us to stay optimistic, to stay secure, to stay confident. And in those situations, some of it is, speaking to ourselves and encouraging ourselves, surrounding ourselves with positive people that will help us to stay positive in that situation, and not to go down to particularly remember things that we're grateful for and things that are good, and to encourage ourselves by, writing gratitudes, for example. But during that time, when we're feeling that rejection, when we've made those steps and we have to regroup and try again or make another step, just some thoughts of what we can be doing during that is clarify the dream, clarify what is it we want to do. Sometimes it can be quite vague in our minds. I found I wanted to tell the world about meaning and purpose. It sounds embarrassing, it sounds strange now. And so clarifying it, what can I teach, and finding, oh, I went to teach psychology, for example, in order to do that, because I adjusted the dream slightly, and so it became a bit clearer, becoming a little bit more adjusted. Sometimes you have to break that down into smaller steps, applying. So in my story, I started teaching just first 1 hour, then 2 hours a week, and slowly built up to a part-time post. I think 1 year or two I might have done that full time, but I never really was comfortable doing full-time work in that. But it was breaking it down and doing something step by step in order to get there. And I think there can be dangers in adjusting your dream, because you can find that you never quite get to what you'd really like to do. You know, if your dream is being a musician and you end up being a roadie, you say, well, really, I want to be a musician, but all I do is carry the equipment around for this other musician, and you never get there. Sometimes call that a shadow dream. And so I always say, no, we really need to be careful in adjusting the dream, that we are open to, and we move towards what we really want to do. And we adjust, though that can be good for a time, we still need to push on. And I think I've spent a lot of my time waiting, thinking, oh, something will happen, I'll get a break, I'll get something good, you know, I'll be asked to do something, and that never really happened. I never got and I think you've got to make the effort, you've got to push, you've got to apply for the job, you've got to make those small steps. And similarly, in building a relationship with Nets, I had to make the steps to to go through the dating site, and to again handle some disappointment and rejections along the way. I think, and another important thing is learning more about yourself. I think my autism diagnosis was such a big step. I've talked about that a couple of weeks ago, but understanding something that I thought I understood a little bit about my strengths and weaknesses before that. I understood something about my transferable skills, what I was good at. I'd been a tour guide, so I thought, oh, I can teach, and so on. But it's amazing the insight that an autism diagnosis gives you. And insight into yourself is very important in knowing what to do and being able to articulate the dream a little bit more clearly, that aspiration, saying, well, I know what I'm good at, I know I can do this, I know I'm not very good at doing something else. I thought at one time of being a clinical psychologist, and I'm glad that I didn't. I would not have had the people skill. I would not have had the people skill if I'd gone into the church, for example. I would have been terrible at some of the people skill that would have been needed. So being aware of that and developing those social skills, I think, as people have understood me, and Netza has said this a couple of weeks ago, as she's understood me better, I think the skills have developed. So yeah, I think that's handling that rejection and disappointment. Those are the things to do on the way. So what I want us to do today, remember, as I said this at the beginning, this is just the first of, I think there's a lot in this that we can go into in next week and the week after as well. So this is really only a very brief introduction to this, and I want to go into this in a little bit more detail. But to start with, I think it'd be good to go into breakout rooms and have a little bit of a discussion and a think about some of these things. So I've got some questions here I just want to say for a few moments. So consider in breakout rooms, if you can consider areas where you've had or still have aspirations. So some of it will be looking back, some of it will be, yeah, I'd still like to do this. Only share what you're comfortable sharing. And be aware you might have, you know, some sort of dream that you've not fully formed in your head. And please, when you're talking with someone else, don't say to anybody, that's not realistic, you'll never do it. Don't say anything that's discouraging to people, because sometimes it just needs a bit of clarifying and shaping and so on. But consider those, so you might want to have a moment to think about that. Perhaps while I'm talking here, while you're first in your room, you may have, those I've sent the slides to beforehand on the mailing list, you may have been thinking about this. But think about what you might learn from previous disappointments, maybe in going towards that aspiration or other aspirations, and what you gain from that. And think about how might dreams that have died live again. Because I think that's important, that we can have that, if that dream's still with you in some way, but it feels like it's died, but it is still aware of it somewhere. I really wanted to do that. Maybe there's a place of resurrecting that. And think of what small intentional steps you can make towards your aspiration, towards those aspirations, or people can. So some of that might be quite personal, but you might want to also think of it in general steps. And as I said, share what you feel comfortable sharing. So I think we can finish recording there, and we can go into breakout rooms. Next, can you stop the recording?
Hang on. Trying to do two things at once.